Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Nate McMurry, and he's running for the Congressional District 27 here in New York State. And Nate, we'll get right back into this. One of the questions that I have, and this, after covering politics for a long, long time as a journalist, and having off the record and personal conversations and getting to know people who were in politics on both sides of the aisle, it kind of comes down to a pattern where if you're running for an office and you have the best of intentions, you really want to make a difference. You're going to go in there and you're going to do great things for your district, and you have high ideals. You actually get into office, and we'll talk about Congress as an example. You get into office, you go to Washington, and the very first thing that happens is they take you aside and they say, here's how it works. You vote the way we tell you to vote, you say what we tell you to say, and if you behave yourself, we'll throw you a couple of bones and you can do some stuff for your district. But if you tend to be independent and you don't do exactly what we tell you to do, then we're going to sit you in a corner and nobody will ever hear from you again. And when it comes time for re-election, we'll support somebody else and you'll be gone. So you got to basically toe the line and do what you're told. Is a vote for you basically going to be a vote for Nancy Pelosi? Is it going to put you in a difficult position deciding between local and national?
Phil, number one, this district has been taken advantage of by national politics over and over and over again. They told you to vote for Chris Collins. Look how that turned out. I was the guy saying, don't vote for Chris Collins. Where was Chris Jacobs? I mean, where was Stefan? Stefan was on the stage with Chris Collins. It's a joke. We've been used, and we do not have representation in the middle of a crisis. That's number one. So you've already been ripped off here by party politics. Number two, if anyone thinks I'm not independent, you're not watching. I'm the guy who stood up to Governor Cuomo. I'm the one who said, no, I'm not going to move when he told me to move, drop out of the race. I said, no way. I'm the one who's always been independent, and it's not been easy for me. Local political leaders have had a hard time with me because I'm so independent. But you know what? That's why people do support me in NY27. The people see that I'm an independent voice. I will go and I'll do what's right for NY27. Let's not forget, when Chris Collins was here, the one thing he did do was help pass that tax bill that absolutely targeted everybody in New York State by removing your state and local tax exemption. He voted against the interest of New York State. He did it for party politics. And then he was removed from office, and everybody, including all the people I'm running against, no one said a word about this guy. He completely exploited the people of NY27. He completely exploited New York State. And the people that I'm running against today are the people that helped him. If you're looking for an independent voice, it's me. And the thing I get too much from the Democratic Party is you're too independent. Why can't you tone it back a bit? Why can't you fall in line? I don't do that. I'll vote for what's right, and I'll fight for what's right. You can hear it in my voice, and if you've been following my political career, you know I'll do what's right, even when it's not easy. When I was a small town leader, I always did what's right, even when it wasn't the right thing to do. And the issues were much smaller back then, but heck, I fought Tonawanda Coke when everyone told me to shut up, and it worked out great. That place is gone, and our families aren't being polluted and killed anymore. I fought for the West River Trail. Every single person on Grand Island didn't want that trail over on the west side, but I knew it was the right thing to do for the entire community. Now that trail is used every single day. It sounds like a small issue, but at the time it was a big issue for me and my family who were getting harassed over it. So I'm someone who's proven I've got a backbone. And, even right now, do you think it's easy for me to have run against the nephew of my boss? That wasn't easy. It was a difficult decision. And I didn't want to do it. Part of me said, I got to support my family, but I knew it was the right thing to do, is to run in NY27 and fight for the things I care about. And fight for the people here who've been taken advantage of by both parties and exploited. Last thing I'll say, Phil.
Well, certainly that takes a lot of courage to go out on a limb like that. And I got to hand it to you that it's a battle that you've chosen to take part in, and you got to get credit for that. Now, you mentioned earlier that taxes. You said that the the Trump administration has given tax cuts mostly for the upper class, you know, the Chris Jacobs and the corporations and the people who have more money. Now, people out there watching now, the workers and middle class, haven't they gotten a tax cut and paying less? I mean, it seems to me that they have.
But Phil, let me jump in and I'll explain it because it gets me so mad.
Okay.
They duped you. There is a that resolution, the tax bill that they passed, has a sunset provision where those small tax benefits they gave to regular people go away. They go away. The ones for everybody, for the rich people like Chris Jacobs, they last forever and ever and ever. So they gave you a little bit of cheese, but they stole the rest of it. And and they also, for New York State, it completely undermines us because it takes away state and local tax exemptions. For regular middle class people, that was how a lot of people really survived. I mean, they had those exemptions and it helped them get through the taxes we have in New York State that fund the rest of the country. So it targeted New York State. There's sunset provisions for the regular people inside of the bill. 83%, according to Trump's own administration, 83% of the benefits of that bill went to the most wealthy Americans. 83%. Now that seems like an unfair deal to me. No one would accept that deal anywhere else. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. The logic that the Republicans say for those kinds of tax cuts is that it's primarily for business people to make investments in companies to stimulate job creation, and that will then give more jobs to the people who have to earn the living, and it will benefit the economy by creating more jobs, and then basically putting more money into the hands of people who are middle class and lower class. Isn't that, wouldn't that be a good thing?
Well, that's so-called trickle-down economics.
Right.
That had been proven over and over again for 40 years it hasn't worked. How do we know it hasn't worked? Because we can measure it. Just like you can measure anything, like you can measure rainfall or you can measure snowfall. You can measure the fact that the buying power of the average American family has decreased dramatically in the last 40 years. The average pay of CEOs in this country has increased 1,000% in the last 40 years. 1,000%. It's very different than when my dad was working. It was a very different era. And the reason, and there you have more household debt, you have less buying power, you have less vacation time. In every single metric, middle class people in this country have become more and more difficult. There are tax cuts that help middle class people, and I'm all for them. If you cut income tax or sales tax, it helps regular people. But the problem is, these are tax cuts. If you read the bill, don't believe me, go read the bill. These are tax cuts that literally say we're going to give people who own millions of dollars in real estate an internal tax cut. How does that help regular people? What it does is it helps the most wealthy Americans. And you can see, we can measure, the imbalance in America has increased. There is more wealth in the top than there's ever been since the Gilded Age in America, since the robber baron era in America. I'm all about, I don't mind if you're rich. I'm not against rich people, but I'm against rich people that are being rich made on the backs of my friends and family. They deserve their fair cut, and we deserve a country where the middle class matters. The middle class is getting squeezed, and the money has to go somewhere, and most of it's been going up. 83% of that tax bill has gone to the most wealthy Americans, and I think regular people should understand it. Don't believe the hype. Read for yourself. Don't believe what I'm saying or Stefan's saying or Jacobs is saying. Read the bill. Do the research yourself, because you're going to find out we got ripped off.
You know, one of the point I wanted to make was John F. Kennedy, who was one of my favorite presidents. He, as a Democrat, he cut taxes for businesses and the higher income people. And in a speech, and I believe, and I've called that speech up on my program a couple of times. I think it was in 1962, but he said basically the same thing that Ronald Reagan said, is, you know, we have to cut taxes for business so that we can stimulate the economy and make more jobs. That was a Kennedy thing. It didn't originate, that trickle-down stuff didn't originate with Ronald Reagan. It was actually Kennedy who, in my lifetime, first did that. And so I don't know that today's Democrat philosophy is the same as the philosophy when John F. Kennedy was president. But somehow I see the logic of what they're saying is if you stimulate businesses, there are more jobs, and that makes sense to me. Now, whether it works in the real world, you know, there's a lot of other elements that come in.
But I don't believe in a trickle-down economy. I believe in a bubble-up economy. If you help regular people stimulate we can go back for a second here. Who is the economy? Right now, the economy is dead because no one can go to the movies,
Right.
no one can go to get their hair cut, no one can go to the store. So don't tell me it trickles down. It bubbles up. So we got to help the regular people go get their haircuts, go to the store, go to the movies, buy cars. If it bubbles up, everyone benefits. If it trickles down, it stagnates. And here's the thing I know, because I've been in this business for a long time, and helping big companies. They don't invest in America, Phil. When you give them those tax cuts, this capital seeks the greatest return on investment. For them, that means Asia, it means India, it does not mean the United States. That money's going overseas. Those tax cuts is a great way to get the money out of this country. The last thing I'll say, I got to say this because I can talk to you all day about this stuff.
Yeah, no problem.
But the tax on people like Chris Jacobs used to be 80-something%. So what they did is they cut taxes on guys like him, and they pushed it off to the middle class.
Right.
Read about the history. The book you guys can read is called Tax Wars: The History of Income Tax in America. What they did is the original purpose of income tax was to create a middle class in this country, and it worked. When they created an income tax in the early 1900s, the richest people challenged it. They said, we don't want that income tax. They challenged it, and guess what? They lost in the courts. That income tax paid for our schools, it paid for our roads, it paid for everything. But around, you're right, the 50s and 60s, they started to push it down to the middle class. So now, instead of having our country supported by the most wealthy people like Chris Jacobs, the tax burden is on the poorest children, middle class families, and that's got to end.
I want to thank Nick McMurry for being my guest on this big picture. It's going to be an interesting political season, and we'll keep up with it. Hopefully you guys, out there, aside from the good entertainment on WBBZ, we like to inform you. And it's not just 30-second sound bites. We want to give you some substance. Anyway, thanks for watching The Big Picture. And as always, thanks for watching WBBZ-TV. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.